We are back off our mid-season break of Two Sides of the Table. How have you been?
Fantastic. And look, it just feels like we keep seeing each other every single week at events and things like that are coming up. And we're just talking off air about the craziness between now and the end of Christmas. So what have you been up to, Kayla?
Well, we've had the SMBIT conference, which we were both at 2 weeks ago now. So that's been keeping us busy. And then lots leading up until the end of the year. You've been in London.
I was last week, for the GTIA event, the conference over there. So my first time doing that event, and it was a great event, and also a chance to catch up with a few customers over in Europe as well whilst there.
Perfect. Sounds exciting. And what's been keeping your brain active since we last saw each other, Pete?
Yeah, look, everyone keeps telling me about this book that actually 10x is easier than 2x.
Yes.
And
Yep.
so I finally decided that after 40 people telling me about it, that I should read it. So, definitely recommend it. It's been a good read for sure.
Yeah, awesome. I did read that one last year, but as most of our listeners know, I'm an audiobook girl. So I just couldn't handle the author's voice. I couldn't get through to the end. So I do have to go and grab a hard copy and read it. So, but as we are in season 2, so we are joined by another guest today. So today we are sitting down with Braden Voigt, CEO of Lynkz, who's actually our first non-MSP guest. So he's really falls into that solution provider category. So Braden's got more than 15 years experience across the IT industry, working his way through everything from hands-on technical consulting, and he wears that senior leadership role now. He spent most of his career with Microsoft partners, helping organizations like mining, manufacturing, healthcare, to modernize and secure their environment. So he's got certifications from here to kingdom come. And he's now really working as the CEO of Lynkz, when Lynkz is a group of companies actually, which I'm sure we'll get into in a minute, but also drives the sales role as well in that business. So Braden, welcome to Two Sides of the Table.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries. So talk to us a bit about your background and sort of how Lynkz came to be, because you're not a new business, but you're not exactly an old one either.
No. We've been around for about 8 years now, or just over 8 years. Originally come out of, as you mentioned before, different companies I work for. I saw with them they all do their things very, very well. Like you look like Data3 and Dimension Data, but they weren't software dev companies. They didn't do that. They've never done it, and they still to this day really don't do it. And I saw a gap in the market where doing things for ISVs, so that's when Six Pivot was born. I worked with Faith Rees, we're co-founders of that business, and that was in 2015. And then I exited that business in 2017. And with Lynkz, it was all around AI. So what we wanted to do is we started to see people talking about it. OpenAI was a thing in 2015, but it wasn't really mainstream. Now you look at ChatGPT, it is very much mainstream. Everyone's talking about it. So we thought, let's get ahead of the kind of the market and the curb, which is why we started Lynkz. And from there, 3 months into our venture, we won a pretty big project working for NBN, building the commercial satellite network for Australia. And we got our first big exposure into big projects, but also working with AI solutions. So and it kind of evolved over the last 8 years. It's been AI project after AI project, but doing things differently to the way that I think. And one of the challenges with the market today is the way they're doing these things. It's not working. We're seeing a lot of projects fail. It is because of the way that they're trying to learn how to do it now, whereas there's been a way of doing it right for the last 8 years, which we've been adopting. So there's been a lot of stuff we've worked on, a lot of cool stuff that we've worked on. But that's really where Lynkz kind of started.
Yeah, awesome. And so talk to us about the business. It's made up of a group of businesses, isn't it? So you're doing lots of different things within that one. I know your business quite well. Mm-hmm. You've got 3 sort of pillars in that business, so it's quite broad, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've got the parent company as Lynkz, but we have subsidiaries that fall part of that. And what we found is while we're building software for our clients, we found issues that they were encountering, or even us. So with products like Debrix, we found that building software, you can repeat the process so many times, but there's still challenges you will have along the way. Good user stories. You try and get a BA in a room and ask them, this is what I want. You may not always get clear requirements, whereas tools like that help us accelerate our software development. but it helps our clients accelerate it as well. So we have that product. We have some vision products as well. We have an investment arm, which we'll be announcing a pretty strategic investment very, very soon, very exciting one. And Lynkz has its core pillars. So we focus on AI, we focus on app modernization, and then we have our project delivery side as well. So pretty much everything you could require to build a piece of software, from graphic designers to testers to developers to AI engineers, Scrum Masters, they're all in the business. So that was one of the key differentiators we wanted to do, because you look at a lot of the competitors in the market, they don't have that full end-to-end capability. They'll focus on development, but they might not have strength in the BA side, so projects would fall over, and we'd see that quite common. So
Yeah,
kind of the change.
and I think it's quite interesting. And look, we'll definitely dive into the AI piece, because I think for a lot of listeners, they're really trying to understand, how they start to incorporate that into the business. And obviously, you're really ahead of the game. But I think it'd be good maybe just to unpack, because you often see this with business owners where they have various different, strings to their bow. And then they always go through this conundrum. Do we actually go under one brand, or do we separate that out into individual brands? And, what was the thought process to be able to then have, this house of brands that sits under the Lynkz group?
Part of it was R&D. So being able to compartmentalise the R&D funding. And we're actually building them. The other thing was commercialising the product. So doing it as Lynkz versus Debrix versus Polyvision or any of the other brands, keeping them separate, we can market them separately, but then leverage Lynx's brand behind it to push it into clients. So it was a self-controlled, self-run product or service, but it gave us focus as well. If it was all in Lynkz, it incubated in Lynkz. It generally started there, and we get it to a point where we validated it, and then we go, yeah, it's a good idea, let's move it out. But it was mainly driven off the fact that let's start there, shift it out, move it on, and let it run in its own sort of isolation. But that's kind of how we did it. Yeah. It's worked so far.
Yeah, and I think, it'd be good maybe to unpack that a little bit as well, because I think a lot of organisations start to build IP because they've seen a gap in the market, or they've seen a process that they want to improve. What do you think are the best tips for someone that's actually got that IP and maybe looking to commercialise it as the first steps?
So I've seen this in some other big companies as well. The first challenge is you'll find that a lot of them will start building the software, but they won't. Well, there's no one there really to drive the fact that it's going to be commercialized. So it might be, some developer goes, oh, that's a great idea, and they'll start building it, they'll implement it into the team, but there's not enough buy-in from the senior execs. So I generally say, anyone that I'm talking about this is, can you commercialize it? Is there more than one client really that is interested in this? Can you actually scale it? And then from there, definitely go and, investigate it, trial it though. Trial it out in the market. Don't just rely on internal clients. Because the other thing I have found with that is they're a lot more, accepting of you pushing a product that's your own into theirs. Whereas if you've got to go and make money separately and actually sell it as a product, that's a whole new kettle of fish. So definitely the tips being is try it. If you don't try, you don't know. And you might fail, but that's a learning exercise.
Agree. Yeah, agree. I think you never fail, right? You just learn.
You do. You do.
So I guess you've had a lot of hats over the years. So obviously before Lynkz, you were working for other providers. Yep. And what sort of have you learned through that process of wearing, that hat? Because those different hats, I think I agree that it's really good to wear and be doing the doing before you become the leader of a business that does the doing. So what have you sort of learnt through that process, and where have you sort of gone with it? What's it help you bring into Lynkz?
I've learned a whole lot. So I think probably the one company I've learnt I'd say the most from would have been Data3. There's a lot of individuals there that Scott Gosling, he's the Microsoft practice lead there. He, was a range of things, even books of, one called Let's Guerrilla, Let's Not Play. And I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts before. It gave me the ability to understand in a pre-sales meeting or even a sales meeting the buying signals, when to disengage, when to continue forward with the conversation. I'm not an extrovert. I'm born introvert. But that book made me realize that you don't have to be an extrovert to sell. You just need to listen. And if you do that, you can actually position it right to the client where they'll buy it naturally. But you can also buy back the solutions. So things like that I learned. Having technical ability now as a CEO, I think has its own negatives as well, because I'll sit on a call and I'll be thinking about the technical thing, but I've got to make sure that I'm not overstepping, letting the guys that I've hired to do, they know what they know. So that, is I guess a trait that I struggle with, which I think anyone that's been technical before moving into this will struggle with, that you kind of know
huge.
what you know. But yeah, I think I've learned a lot of different things from different organizations. My time at Redify, I wasn't dev background, I was infrastructure background. So I joined Redify in quite a senior role, and I learned a lot about dev, and then having the two skill sets, being able to connect them together in what is now Lynkz, I can look at infrastructure and how we do that with AI, but understand the dev side and the impact between the two. Whereas before, I never would have known that. So definitely the career choices I made over the last 20 years have definitely set me up for where I am today, that's for sure.
Do you struggle not to, as CEO now, you obviously wouldn't be doing a lot of that sort of pre-sales, sort of, designing?
Not design. It's more the envisioning side. So a lot of clients will come to us and they go, we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I'll look at it from a different perspective of, well, I understand the business driver here. These are all the tools you can leverage. So I generally try not to design them all. I'll let them to the mats to kind of decide.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally it's more that strategic thinking of, think about this, or why haven't you done this?
Yeah.
Or we've failed over here by doing this before. Maybe you should consider it yourself.
And that's not because you need to. That's just because you
I like
doing
doing
that
it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like being able to walk on a client and say, we've helped them change.
Yeah. So fun fact about Lynkz is that every solution leader in that business is called Matt. So, you can't say, I just had a conversation with Matt, because Braden will go, which one?
Well, that makes the hiring decision pretty easy. You're either called Matt or you're not hired by the sounds of it.
Exactly.
No, we've said no more Matts because it makes it too difficult. Yeah.
But I think you come from a unique background, Braden, and I think, coming from an infrastructure world, but then having that exposure from a development perspective is, I think, probably one of the secret sources that exists in your business, because now that we've moved to a platform play, there is no line of delineation really between what is actually infrastructure now and what is development. That line has become very blurred, and I think that experience is, from what I hear, what you bring to the table for customers.
Definitely. It has... especially with the way that the models are running at the moment. You can go and grab, OpenAI or as a service really out of Azure, but there is limitations. So understanding the technical limitations of that, but also running it, as your own infrastructure. You look at, these systems still hallucinate. You still got to worry about your data and data sovereignty. You have to worry about them training their systems off your data. Which is why we've been doing a lot of custom LLM builds in Azure or Amazon or Google, whatever the platform is, and it's their environment. And that's what we've been doing since 2017. So whereas, now it's more, let's deploy an agent for this, or let's deploy AI just because someone said to deploy AI, which is not the way to go. And we're seeing that, as I was talking to Peter before, about 95% of businesses are not getting any form of return on AI projects. So that's why. Yeah. Exactly why.
And maybe it's a good point to maybe just take a step back. And so when you think of AI, Braden, what is it that you think of today? Like, what does that look like? Because I think most people, when they think of AI, are still just thinking of ChatGPT. Yeah. But, tell me in your words what you think AI means for our listeners.
Yeah, so if I look at some of the projects that we've done over the years, it's more, one was, I'll give you an example actually. One was actually looking at weather data, being able to determine bucks. So what a buck is a dish, basically, that would connect to a network. We have great weather in Queensland, don't we? Gets pretty cyclone.
Until this time of the year when we're about to.
So you look at what happens in Queensland, and we get cyclones, and they'll hit and damage equipment. So looking at predicting when that will happen, predicting the damage rate of equipment, then auto dispatching that equipment to the location. So we've got businesses that don't have as much downtime. So it's more looking at value. I don't like using the word AI. I don't like using the word ML because it's rubbish. We're not really AI. AGI has not been achieved. Until we hit artificial general intelligence, there's no such thing as AI really. It is just a whole heap of models that are doing stuff that we're directing. We've still got to tell it what to do. It's the whole point behind prompts. You still got to guide it. When we're at AGI, prompts will go. So I look at what we're doing, and it's more around optimizing things in the business, trying to make things more efficient, trying to actually deliver a return. So we drive the projects based on return, not just based on I get AI because I get AI. So I think that's the key the key differentiator here is doing it with the goal in mind to get to that outcome.
It's the age-old adage, isn't it? Where it's like, same with marketing. What are you actually trying to achieve here? Because it's all well and good to turn it on, but if you don't actually need to, or you don't have a goal that you're trying to get to, then what's the point?
Yeah, and technology at the end of the day is just an enabler to achieve a business outcome and a business process. And I think it's interesting. I was looking at sort of the Wayback Time Machine, doing a bit of research the other day, and I think it's really interesting the way that even looking at different organisations' websites, how machine learning was sort of the flavour of the month, and then it became AI, and then it started to become agents, and now we're talking about agentic AI, and very quickly we're moving through those different phases of maturity as really the market tries to describe what it is that AI really is.
Yeah, they do. But the problem is with those definitions as well, people get wrapped up in what they think they mean. This whole agentic, it's just a whole heap of agents working together. And although that can be extremely powerful for businesses, if you don't deploy the right tooling too, like there's tools like Make, there's tools like N8N, the wrong choice up front will literally cause issues for you long term. So, and we're seeing that again. It is the AI movement, the Me Too movement, and they're doing it at such pace that they're not considering the implications of that deployment. So it's concerning, especially from an ethics perspective. I recently bought the Meta Ray-Ban 2s, Gen 2s, and just recording and realised that I can walk it down the street and record content, no one would know I'm recording. Where's the ethical component in that? So you've got to be careful with what you're using these tools for these days.
Do you think that ethics is a consideration for a lot of people?
They're there to make money.
Yeah.
You look at OpenAI, as much as they try and say they're ethical, there's a reason Elon Musk exited. And that's my view. But there's a reason that took place.
I definitely think it's not something people think about.
They don't. Because, again, we're driven by money. Get to the end result as fast as you possibly can. Don't worry about who you're going to hurt along the way. And we've seen this with chatbots, with things that are happening there. You look at Deloitte and the issue that happened there. It's a matter of save money, get there as fast as possibly can. Do we really care about the people along the way? And that is a concern.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I was listening to a podcast on the way from the coast today, and it was actually on the Wall Street Journal, and so it has actually sued OpenAI, and it's also sued Microsoft as well because they've consumed that without authorised content. So it'll be one of the first test cases actually of that with that. And the interesting part of that is they've actually set up a licensing agreement actually with Amazon so that Amazon can consume that, but under a paid model. So it'd be really interesting around that ethics about who actually owns content, what is actually yours versus what is actually to be able to be consumed by others.
Wow.
Yeah, that's happened a lot. We have seen that, quite commonly around that whole model. If you, like, for example, use ChatGPT and you're not in a paid subscription, or everything you put in there is going into that model. So, and people don't know that. Like the amount of people I've spoken to about that, they go, say what? I'm like, you have to have a paid subscription if you want to control your data.
Yeah, I was at a conference earlier this week, and we were having great conversations with people just around sort of Copilot, ChatGPT, and the amount of people that are putting project data, customer data into the free version of ChatGPT, and they just didn't know.
Yep.
They had no idea. There's not that level of basic education, I think, for people around AI, and I definitely think that's not something we experience in the technology community or the IT community. We seem to be a lot more clued into this, but our customers or even our customers' customers don't have that basic level of education, and there's a huge gap in the market for that.
Shadow IT at its finest.
Correct.
Because ChatGPT come out, everyone got the ability to see it. Yeah. Was it like 1 million users or something, and it was under a week or something?
Yeah, so 5 days for 1 million users, and then 30 days for 100 million users.
So you look at that, they're not trained. So we're going to have those issues and those challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think, I always think where there's chaos, there's margin. So, obviously the AI world at the moment is very chaotic. It's very disrupted. Sort of reminds me of the early days of the internet. We'd have terms like the information superhighway to describe it, sort of this buzzword for the internet. And I think we're in that phase with AI at the moment where there's a lot of buzzwords and people are looking for direction and leadership about how to take advantage of these tools. And so, Brad, in your eyes, like if someone's really just starting to dip their toe in the water for AI to improve a business process, because I think that's where most of our listeners really are thinking about that, is driving that internal efficiency. Where do you think they should start?
It really depends on what you're taking to market, but probably a good place to kind of dip your toe in the water is front-end chatbots. They're minimal exposure to a degree. What I've started to see is, some dropping into from a ticket resolution perspective. So I've got a problem. You've got a knowledge base.
Yeah.
Like you've been working supporting clients for so long, so an LLM can consume that data. I think that's another good area. I've started to see quite a bit of movement in finance, although I have concerns with that, with the ATO legislations. If you let it do your BAS and it automatically lodges that, then what happens if it's wrong? So there's things like that I go probably stay clear of, but starting at that's going to deliver value straight away. You're going to save money in your business by doing, the front end and the chatbot, which will enable you to scale on the back end, which will allow you to do more and introduce more from an AI perspective. But
I think it's an important distinction to make is a lot of our listeners are MSPs. You're not an MSP. Like, talk to us about that in that regard, because I think some MSPs would maybe say, oh, are you the competition? And that's really not the case. You guys are you're doing such different things to an MSP. But I think what you've just spoken about is really important because that's something an MSP could do as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we don't do desktop support. We don't do a lot of that stuff. We'll build a piece of software and maintain that software on the infrastructure, but there's a lot of other stuff we just don't do.
Yeah.
Even though I have an infrastructure background, and a lot of people are like, why don't you do that? I'm like, it's not where I see the future.
Yeah.
So why would I, support it in that manner? It's more the fact that I see infrastructure where MSPs are playing. It's an underpin for our software. Yeah. So I want them to do well at that, and we do well at that. Don't be everything to everyone. Yeah. So definitely, I think looking at our experience with Data's Free, we do a lot of work for them. And several other partners as well, or channel partners at the moment. So it's definitely, we don't compete. We're very clear as to how we engage with those partners. If Data's Free thought we were a threat, they wouldn't do business with us. It wouldn't be giving us the work they give us.
Yeah.
So, we stick to our lane and always have stuck to our lane.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good example, especially like larger organisations, because often people think that those large organisations, they're really big, multi-billion dollars, that they can do everything. Yep. But the reality is you can't. And so I sort of overlay that if you're a $3 to $5 million business, there's no way that you can do everything. And I think that's where partnerships become so important to know, well, this is what we're good at. This is our lane we're going to stick in. And anything outside of that, then building out that trusted network that they can bring in to be able to then deliver that capability and, be able to deliver the outcomes for their customers, but not necessarily have to do everything themselves.
We've done a lot of that in Melbourne with partners. They've come to us because they say, well, we don't know how to modernise this app, or, the infrastructure's been upgraded, but we're not sure if it's going to work. So, they do well at that managed service side, and we just sit on top and assist them. But it's a rapidly changing ecosystem with AI and MSPs.
And I think this is the future, right? We're hearing data from, the likes of ConnectWise, Kaseya, that partnerships really are the way of the future for an MSP to modernise and to move into that sort of, I guess, more competitive landscape. So I suppose, you offer one sort of solution for that. Like there's other partners that offer different things. So I think that partnership and creating that ecosystem is really key for MSPs as we move into that future. And we already know that the MSP as it stands today is not going to be the same as it in the next 5 to 7 years. And I think partnerships are going to play a key role in that.
Yeah, definitely automation, especially with AI and tools like an add-in. Managed service providers are going to be able to scale a lot easier and save a lot with those tools. So they definitely are going to change, that's for sure.
That's it. Who's getting left behind in the AI space at the moment? What industries?
As in not adopting it?
Yeah. Who's slow in the uptake versus who's fast in the uptake?
I'd say some law firms are adopting it, but it's more for support. So bringing in case notes and things like that, and transcribing, but there is obviously the legality side of doing that. So we're starting to see a bit more traction in that. Logistics, that's a no-brainer for AI, or process automation, really. So we're seeing in that area, you're completely aware of a client we're working with on the moment, of introducing that, being able to automate a whole range of things using vision. So there is a lot in that space. Actually, there's a few clients we're doing it for. So I'd say logistics, manufacturing, massive play for AI, massive move in that. Being left behind, I don't know, it's a good one. I think everyone's looking at it. I don't think anyone's being really left behind. I think the ones that are being left behind is the CEOs or the business owners that don't understand it.
Yeah.
Or they're threatened by it, or there's people in the business that are blocking it because they're threatened about losing their job, which we do see as well. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great point, actually. Like, one of my questions today for you was, we're seeing, I suppose, a lot of people, talking about how AI is going to take over and, they're going to lose their jobs to AI. And there's a lot of talk about, I suppose, how do we augment people into the AI process? What's your what do you think, what's your response to that? Because I've got a response, Pete's got a response, but
Yeah.
I'd love to hear sort of your review on that.
Everyone seems to think that software developers will be replaced. Like that's just common knowledge in the market. They're like, oh, there'll be no software devs. But I'm betting my business against that. And the reason is I see how software's built. I know that these systems still hallucinate. Even when we get to AGI, it will still hallucinate in different areas. Would you really want a computer controlling every bit of code that gets put in your environment? No.
Don't know.
So no.
Should I?
No.
Yeah. But I think the reality is even when you've got those sub-agents that you're building, you still need humans to shepherd that
Exactly.
through
You
that
do.
piece there. And I think Jensen said it really well from NVIDIA in the latest results call that they did a couple of weeks ago. And his view is that he can increase efficiency for all of their software devs today by 100% efficiency. And so for him, it's not about removing staff. It's going, well, I can now, with the same team, be twice as efficient. So be able to actually have faster output. And I think, that's then, if you think about what's driving a lot of the underlying AI technology, it's some of the investments that NVIDIA is making. So if they're able to then move to that next genesis of chipsets even faster, imagine what we're going to be able to do in the future.
Yeah, well, you look at the circle of money, NVIDIA, OpenAI, it just Microsoft,
yeah.
it's doing this. So that money's shifting around quite, between those organisations. But I look at it and I go, pull request reviews, yep, you can automate some of that. Code generation, we're using Databricks to, generate code. But we're doing it in a manner where it's controlled. There's always a human that's reviewing it. There's always someone, in that mix to make sure that's right. So there is going to be jobs that are going to be replaced. But like any, change over the last 20, you look at the dot-com boom and what happened then. You look at where we are now, roles will become redundant, but new ones will be created.
Yeah.
So it's just a cycle of the market as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you look at that dot-com bubble, a number of people had the job of webmaster. But you don't see that as a role anymore that anybody's advertising.
Yeah.
So, that technology changes and the underlying roles change as well.
How do you encourage innovation in the business? Because, I've had the pleasure of talking to each of your pillar leads, and the conversations that I have with them, my mind is usually very blown after I have that. They just look at things so differently. You've obviously done something right in that sense. And I suspect for a business like yours, where you sort of need to be on that bleeding edge or that cutting edge of what's going on in the market, how do you encourage that? Like, you've obviously hired the right people, but there's got to be an ongoing piece to that as well.
It's the key thing we put in our contracts.
Okay.
So we've had 2 individuals leave and start their own companies. There's 2 individuals currently working for us that have their own businesses or on their own products.
Yeah, wow.
And we have 1 guy that left and joined Microsoft. So we are all for innovation, but we day one, it's, do you have a side business you're working on? And usually people hide it. I'm like, I want to know, because, if we can help you and, give that culture of flexibility. So everyone says we have a, flexible working culture. We actually do. So everyone works from home. They have swap days. They have all those benefits that really support innovation. If you're happy, you're going to innovate. If you're not happy, you're not going to innovate. So it's there from day one. And I think that's what's worked the whole time, is giving them the ability, giving them the tools, giving them the playgrounds of having credits with Azure that they can go and burn and do those things that they want to do. I think that's what's, well, pretty sure that's what's caused it. But
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think that's
And you
what's
also
driven it.
like it from you do a little bit of investing on the side. So
Yes,
you're
I
like,
do, yeah.
cool, is this something I
Yep.
can get involved in
Yep,
as
yep,
well?
yep.
I think something like that backs them. Like they think, oh, actually, he doesn't
Yeah.
care if I've got something on the side. Like he
Yep.
wants me to go and work on
Yep.
something of my own. So I love that. I think it's a real key to success.
And I think it's a real differentiator. But if you look at like organizations like Google, I think that's sort of the large scale version of what you're doing, where they will often let engineers go and develop their own products whilst actually still working for Google. And if you look at where some of that innovation is that's often gone out of the business and then they've brought that back into the business as well. So because they've seen that, that product or that person can actually drive that. And I think that's also where they're playing catch up with some of the AI pieces at the moment as well, is by those people that have left Google being able to bring them back. And I think often people try to control that and basically constrain that. And it sounds to me that maybe that's what's holding innovation back, is that constraint for many organizations.
Right. I think CEOs, some CEOs I've met, it's control. I mean, you as a CEO, you do want to control a certain amount of, things in your business. But at the end of the day, the more control you put on, the more staff will feel threatened. And I think they won't innovate because they're frightened. They're like, am I going to have a job if I tell my boss that I'm working on a side project? If one of our guys recently come out and said he'd been working on this thing for a year, and I congratulate him, and I openly said, well, when you're ready to leave the business, let me know. And he goes, oh, probably about a year and a half. Like, what organisation, staff don't have those conversations with the boss. They're worried. Whereas we're like, all right, we know that eventually they'll leave. Every staff member will, hopefully not, but it happens. I think as the CEO, you need to embrace it along the way and go, give them what they need. They'll perform very well while they're working for you. And when they do leave, at least they'll leave with a smile on their face, not, I hated that company because they did this to me. So...
And you'll probably see that cycle that Pete just mentioned start to happen, where they start to come back and bring that knowledge. Yeah,
we've had that.
You've
We've had
already
people
had
come
that.
back.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. Like, I really like that. So if someone wanted to start to pivot, like obviously AI is massive. If someone wanted to start to pivot their career or even their business to start to lean more into that sort of AI, what would be your advice for them?
Strategy first. As I said before, one of the biggest challenges is that shotgun effect of I just want to have AI, and they don't thoroughly think through the impact it will have and also the cost to run it. So generally with any client, we look at holistically, what are you doing? What's your business doing? Ignore the tech. What's your business doing? And then run through that as a process to say, well, these are low-hanging fruits. They're not going to cost you a heap to put it in. Let's use that as a test bed. And then we can talk about bigger things later on. But they need to see the value up front. So I'd say start small. Don't like proof of concepts. It should be something that's going into prod, not just something you can play with. Do it like it's prod, because these large language models need real data. You can't run a POC really to get a good outcome on just a sample set of data. You really need something decent. And it's a whole adage of data in. You know this, Peter, from your past businesses. Data in, if it's crap data out.
Garbage in, garbage out.
So you've got to get that right. So I'd say definitely start with the strategy of where you're taking the company.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because so many organisations really don't have a plan, and as a result, they plan to fail. And it was interesting. Kayla and I were at the SMB IT conference in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and James Davis was on stage, and that was very much, he was saying the same thing about, well, it's really actually having a direction so that you're not rudderless. And the reality is, as a strategy, sometimes you get it wrong, but you then take those signals and then you then pivot that accordingly. But without actually having that clear direction, it's very hard for everyone in the organisation to get behind that and follow that. So you end up people going in different directions, and really just that boat just spins around in circles without that strategy.
I'd say the strategy needs to be written based on the problems that you're having. Choose 5 problems in your business, 5 problems or 5 things you think you can improve, and then just start there. Don't try and grab the whole business, go, there's 500 there, all these things, just 5. And I think that's your best way to kind of get moving with the AI trend.
I think it's the same for us when we work with customers. We always start with a strategy. That's always our first step. And often that strategy will change as the year goes on all the time goes on. But the strategy always gives us something to come back to if we sort of get to a moment where we're like, what's next?
Yeah.
We have something to come back to. And I think it doesn't mean that things can't change and things can't evolve, but you've always got something to land back on. And then, is that still a problem? What can we do to solve that problem?
Yeah.
So looking ahead, what's next for Lynkz? What's the inside scoop that you can give us? And
Can't give you too much. A lot of it is going to come down to working with more MSPs.
Yeah.
I think where the market's going, obviously, we're building great software, but we need someone to put it, and we need that infrastructure managed. And really, the biggest challenge that's coming off the back of this is cost profiling and managing that cost. For those of you that have started playing with these A100 machines or anything in Azure, they're not cheap. And to get reserved, you need to buy a block, and there's $100,000 a month. So you're talking $1 million spend on some of these high-end, GPUs, and you can't get them. That's the other challenge. Microsoft's doesn't have the capacity. So we're starting to see, I guess, a shift there, down that path. But really, I think moving forward, to continue doing the AI work, continue doing it the way we've always done it, not just going, all right, someone out there is doing, agents like this, maybe we should jump on the bandwagon too. No, we're doing the things that we've always done, and we're doing them well, and 100% success rate. We've had every AI project we've built is in production and returning investment, whereas look at how many are not. Yeah. So we won't take it on if we don't think it's going to actually get an ROI for the company.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good for us either.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it sounds like maybe one of those opportunities there that's sort of going to come out for MSPs is the FinOps piece.
Yep.
So being actually able to then cost manage for an organisation and be able to deliver value. Are you seeing a lot of organisations, really starting to then, mature in that FinOps space?
No, not really. Some are, but there's still the challenge of, AI is still a shadow IT thing. So they're trying to get control, but no, not really. I don't know, what are you saying?
Yeah, look, we're seeing a little bit of that in the enterprise space, but it's definitely an opportunity, I think, for MSPs just to start to think about how they transact differently with customers, because traditionally the model was, CSP, I go and sell them the license, or I then take the clip of the ticket for the Azure consumption. But I think in a consumption-based world, people want to optimize that. And that's where I think that there's opportunity to really deliver value by leaning into organizations with that FinOps capability.
Yeah, I think just thinking about the different clients we've dealt with, they are, one of them in particular is doing it for their clients, but they're not doing it for themselves. So it's that whole, adage of Sparky always has, electrical issues, and plumber always has leaky taps. I think it's the same sort of scenario. We're seeing them do it, and we're doing something like that for a client at the moment, but I wouldn't say they're doing it for themselves. Starting to talk about it, but not actively doing it yet. Because again, shadow IT, it's hard to control it. We even have the challenge, like our guys will go and get software, and we'll generally find out about it after the fact. They have the ability to buy what they need, but it's like, well, hang on a minute, we've got something over here that does similar to that. So, but there is an opportunity there, definitely, I think, for MSPs.
Yeah, and I think, that multiple tool set, I think, is quite interesting in the AI world, because it's not uncommon that not only will you have Copilot, you'll have ChatGPT, you'll have Claude, you'll have Gemini, and a vast array of tools that you're then using there. And, how do you think that you start to then get the best out of that? And how does someone go about identifying, well, which is the right tool for the right challenge?
We were talking about this the other day.
That's a hard one. I was actually having a conversation with someone about this yesterday. Sorry, there's with the tools now, looking at 12 months ago, you'd have to choose a product. So you'd have to go, I'm going to use Gemini's LLM, or I'm going to use ChatGPT. What's evolved specifically in tools like N8N is you have a thing called a router, and it can actually direct based on cost profile, based on performance of the environment, based on a whole range of different variables. So it allows you, back to the finance side, it allows you to then control your spend, but also get the best out of each platform, but also change. Because next week, who knows what's going to come out? We could have another new model pop out. We could have the whole war that's going on between them all at the moment if mine's better than yours. And that is happening constantly. So who will hit AGI first? Whoever does that will impact the others. But we don't know. It could be OpenAI, but there's tools like that out there that can actually help you, like N8N, like Make.com.
And it's interesting because you're almost actually creating a market of AI brokers where there's a separation between what the requirement that a customer has and then what engine is then actually then satisfying that request.
And change whenever you need to. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Braden, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I won't give them my mobile number. You can jump LinkedIn, reach out to me on LinkedIn. But yeah, you can reach out to both of you, and you've got my email address, so you can do it that way as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Well, fantastic, Braden. That was really insightful. So I think an amazing story with Lynkz about how you've been able to build such an amazing organisation on AI, but also I think for our listeners to start to think about then, what does AI mean for them? But also, how do they partner effectively as well? Because we can't be everything to everyone. And I think even in your business, you're very structured around that. So I really appreciate the insights there. And I think even for me, just a lot of thought process and things that this podcast has triggered. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If you have any feedback for us on today's episode, then please feel free to send it through. Otherwise, thank you for joining me on the other side of the table, Pete.
As always, Kayla, it's fantastic to be on the other side of the table.
Perfect.